Hello, I'm Linda Ann Smith, video creator for ColourArte. Because I'm used to doing realistic portraits, a whimsy face becomes a challenge because all of the features are distorted. So I'll start with this simple drawing and turn it into a whimsy face that looks like this. So when I wait for appointments, I practice drawing in my mixed media Strathmore book. This is one of my favorite mixed media pads. It is 9 by 12 and 90 pounds. I wouldn't get anything less than 90 pounds. These are the colors from the Luminous Faces line of Twinkling H2O's, and I'm practicing getting to know these today. I paint intuitively, so I'll choose from these 12 colors as I go along. Some of the extra colors I'm going to add are Mandarin Citrine, Snapdragon, and Azurite. I'll remind you in the notes as we go along whether these are in the Luminous Faces line or whether they're Twinkling H2O's that I already had in my studio. I'm also going to be using a couple of markers. The top one is a Martha Stewart opaque marker, and of course the bottom one you recognize as a Sharpie. I failed to get it in the photograph, but I also used a fuchsia color Sharpie marker. You'll need to activate your Twinkling H2O's with a little water before you begin. Now the package recommends 10 minutes before you begin. Sometimes I do it a little more because I go back and add a little extra water. Most people that I see using these are misting them with a spray bottle, but I like to squirt just a little bit on top of each color with a syringe. I don't like the water going everywhere. I drew this while waiting on an appointment, and on the internet I've noticed that the faces that I like that are whimsy have very exaggerated eyes pushed too far out away from each other, too close to the side of the head. They have teeny tiny noses and mouths that are squished down into the chin area, and so that's what I attempted to do, but mine ended up looking a little like an alien, so we'll see what I can do with this and if I can recover it or not. I'm just practicing for fun today, so I dipped into this rich cocoa because it's the darkest color that I have in the Luminous Faces line, and I'm not sure that this is going to work, but we'll see what happens because part of the fun, kind of like art journaling, that's sort of what I'm doing today, an art journal to try to figure out a whimsy face for the future. I like to stress especially when I'm doing watercolors, that good brushes are important. This one comes to a point, makes a nice point when it gets wet, and so I can get into some of the smaller spaces. And I'm mixing up this rose petal so I can get the mica to the top. You know, one of the things that happens whenever you're doing a whimsy face is you're relying on some realism, but also on distortion. So here, the upper lip, if you look at almost all portraits, the upper lip is going to be darker because it's more in shadow. So I'll be coming back to this. I used the rose petal color on the lip, and now I'm going to change to this brush. It's a wide one, and I'm going to start filling in with just some water. If you notice on the face I drew, I didn't put in any hair, and that's what I'm about to do now. In fact, I think I'll go back to that same rich cocoa color and use it to just lay in some hair beside her face. Just some free strokes. I'm thinking it would be good to layer some colors in this hair later, so I'm just laying in the shapes right now, and it's really easy when you have a very wide brush like this to get a lot of shape going at one time. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a background color. I think I'm always saying it doesn't have to be perfect because I know I'm not perfect in what I do. I'm changing colors now. I'm going with the cinnamon stick to go up close to her face. If you notice in nature, where two items meet, quite often there's a shadow. So it's always darker. It's even like where a vase meets the table. There's usually a darker area between those two objects. So if you keep that in mind, it'll help you in all of your art. So I laid in this darker color where her hair meets her face, and then, you know, where the neck is back behind, I'm going to put some of the darker color. I think I'll try a little pale porcelain on her eyelids to make it look like a little soft eyeshadow. One of the things you have to learn in watercolor is patience. Where two colors touch each other or two shapes touch each other, if you're going to fill those in, you have to wait until they're dry if you want a crisp edge. Otherwise, they're going to run into each other. Now right here, I know that I want her neck darker than her face because it'll look like it's in shadow that way. And so I'm going to come around with water on the neck and go ahead and lay in some color on the neck so that I can layer it later with yet another color. Her hair is dry, and I'm going in with the Mocha Rose. And as I said, I'm experimenting with these colors. I want to get to know them so that when I do my next face, I'll kind of know in the Luminous Faces line which colors work best for me where. When I'm in the right brain creative mode, I get ahead of myself a lot of times, and I jump in and just do things intuitively. I did this time. I really know in my heart that I should make a color chart with each one of these colors on it that I can refer to. But today I'm experimenting. I did not make my color chart. I will make it before I start my next face because today it's just guesswork. And one of the things that you should know about any shimmering color is that looking at the bottle or looking at the container, the color in it, is not always a true color whenever you activate it and use it. So these colors will change on paper, and they change according to what paper you use. If I were using watercolor paper, I have no doubt that most of these colors would be even richer. So while I'm waiting on that neck to dry, I can go over here to the hair, and I'm going to add some natural linen to the hair just to see what it does. There's no better way to get to know your media than to experiment with it and just play, just have fun. From what I've discovered so far, I'm pretty sure that rich cocoa is going to be one of my favorite colors because I keep going back to it. I'm adding a darker layer right up against her neck now that it's dry. And a lot of times when I would teach my children at school portraits, they would leave this area that I'm painting in right now, they'd leave it blank as if she were bald in the back, and she'd have two strings hanging down on the sides. I always thought that was kind of amusing, and I'd have them reach up and pull their hair in the back and see if there was hair or look in a mirror, and they were always a little surprised at what they found. There's a lot of common stages when you're working with children that they go through, putting half a house on a page, putting a sun in a corner, some of those things, and some of those things work in Whimsy. So while they may not be fine art ideas, they may turn out well in Whimsy. Now I have dipped into the rose petal, and I'm putting very bright rouge on her face. Too bright. I realize that. In fact, the one on the right, I'm going to have to lift some of that color out. You may be wondering if I noticed that the two sides of the face aren't exactly the same. The eyes are different. Everything's a little bit distorted, which may or may not work on this. But yes, I noticed it. I knew it from the beginning. I don't let little things stop me. I'm experimenting again. I keep saying that, but I'm experimenting. I'm playing. I'm laying in colors. I'm seeing how they work together. I'm approaching this face a little backwards from what I usually do. Usually I paint in the face first and then go back and add some of the features like the nose and whatever. I just did it backwards for some reason. Who knows? I'm still trying to pick up some of that color in that right cheek before it dries, because after it dries, I probably don't have a chance of picking it up, especially since I'm not using a fine quality watercolor paper. This 90-pound paper, as I said earlier, I wouldn't go any less than 90 pounds. A good watercolor paper, if you're doing professional work, is going to be 300 pounds. So on my fine art paper, I usually use somewhere between, I think, 140 to 300 pound paper. But this will give me an idea, working in this Strathmore book, of how things work. Because I want a contrast that isn't in the Luminous Faces line, I'm going to go outside of the Luminous Faces set and bring in some other colors that I already had in my studio. And I'm wetting the background now. I want to put in a background of contrasting color. So I'm wetting the background, and I'm going to use cool colors because cool colors generally recede. They go away from you. Warm colors will come forward. Cool colors will tend to go backwards. And so here's my Snapdragon. I laid in the water, and I'm going to touch this Snapdragon color all over, kind of pulling it with my brush where I want it, trying to decide exactly where I want it, but also letting it do its own thing. It's important in watercolor to let the watercolor work for you. Find out what it wants to do and let it go. That makes the freshest look. You may have heard already that if you use colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, you won't have any problem of them mixing up and making mud. Where sometimes you run into a problem of mixing and making mud is when you use colors that are straight across from each other on the color wheel. If you notice on the color wheel, the greens, the blues, the violets, they're all on the same side of the color wheel, close together. And those are the cool colors, and they will mix together without the brownish tints that the colors straight across from each other on the color wheel make. The color wheel is a valuable tool. It's not just for grade school kids. It's a valuable tool in painting, and if you aren't familiar with it, you should get one and post it on your wall. Everything I do ends up with some kind of blue in it somewhere, something close to turquoise, and this azurite is one of my favorites. It really looks pretty when it starts blending with the Snapdragon. Azurite is one of the colors that I already had on hand. It's not in the Luminous Faces line. And the third color that I'm going to add to this Luminous Faces line is Mandarin Citrine, another color I already had in my studio. I'm doing her eyes. I'm making her look more like an alien, I guess, but when I get through, I think it's going to turn out okay. I've noticed that I've got some really wet petals in this background. You can fold up a Kleenex napkin and just kind of drain that by, it'll siphon up into the paper of the napkin or paper towel if you just put it into the petals. Okay, with that color all mopped up, I'm ready to work on the eyes again. And one of the things that happens, look at this that comes off of my brush. It's off of the ferrule. One of the things that happens to destroy your work sometimes is that you get water or color on the ferrule, and then it drops onto your painting and makes a big blob. So that's something to watch out for. I'm not intending to leave her eyes yellow. This is just a background color that I think will make the color that I add later flash. I am adding some of the Mandarin, it's not yellow, it's Mandarin Citrine. I am adding some of that to her hair to make it sparkle a bit. I'm going to use one of my larger brushes now to put some water in the dress area because her hair is dry and the neck area, the first layer of her neck, is dry, so I can start putting in some colors for her dress. And the first color I used was Natural Linen. Now I'm going over to the Pink Cloud and then dabbing in a little rose petal and letting all those just run together and blend together. As I watch these blend together, I see that they're pretty much like her face, and I want her face to be the center of interest, so I'm going to pull some of that Snapdragon color that I put in the background down here, and that'll push this back just a little bit because it's a cool color, not a whole lot, because I want it to blend and mingle with these colors, but it will cause it to be a little less important. It will recede into the background just a little bit, even though it's part of her dress. I mentioned earlier that I'm used to doing realistic portraits of people, and so it's a challenge to me to distort things, but I'm kind of enjoying this giraffe neck that I put in. I'm adding a second layer now using the Mocha Rose. This way the neck will get darker and look like it's shadowed and further away, while the face will make the face come forward. I did find that this Mocha Rose was a little bit hard for me to get even. I don't know if it was the amount of water I used or what, but I kept having to stroke over it to get it an even color. And so you'll see me go back over it, and then I let it dry just a little bit, and then I go back over it again. All in all, it worked out, but this putting the Mocha Rose on over this particular background color was not the easiest thing I've done. Remember, I'm trying out colors from the Luminous Faces set from ColourArte, so I'm dipping back and forth. This is the golden sand that I'm putting on her forehead, around her eyes, and just using it as another layer on her face to blend all the colors together. I'm learning that many of the colors are such nice skin tone colors that they can be worked layer upon layer without worrying about making mud or giving a chalky look. I'm ready to start the eyes now, and I'm going back to my azurite color. The azurite, I got it a little bit dark here. I'm going to blot it off. But the azurite, as you remember, is a bluish color that I put in the background. The yellowish color, which is mandarin citrine, is already dry. So when I add this over the yellowish color, the mandarin citrine, it gives a very sparkly green. I'm going to try a little almond beige in her hair because I suspect that that color will kind of blend all the other colors together when I add it on top. Look what I did. That drop. Now I've got to try to fix that. So I warned you about that earlier. Okay, here we come with the almond beige. And as I go over it, it is blending in the other colors. It's also kind of lifting some of the colors from the background. So let's try this blushing caramel that I haven't used yet. I'm getting so many layers, and I'm doing it without letting layers dry, that it's just kind of all mixing together now. And that's another technique that I wanted to explore. So let's play with the sand dollar right into the wet. As I play with these wet into wet colors and see how they're reacting, it occurs to me that it might be fun to do a whimsy face where I just start with wet face and just throw a lot of these skin tone colors together. I'm pulling out my black Sharpie now because at the point when I decide I don't like this, I think it needs to just be thrown away. That's usually the point, and I do it every time I make a piece of art. That's usually the point where it's time to finish up, and I need to add a few little details here like her eyelashes. And if I will just keep going when it occurs to me that I really hate this piece, I don't like it at all, I don't like the way it's turning out, then finishing up, just adding my details and cleaning up areas. And markers are an easy way to clean up areas. I'm also going to go over this pupil that I wasn't sure about to begin with. I'm leaving a highlight of the original color, but I'm going to go ahead and color it in really dark so that these eyes really, really sparkle. I know from teaching art for many years that I'm not alone in this self-critic stuff where I really hate the picture that I've just made. And what I suggest from seeing students do this over and over is if you really decide that you can't stand it and you just can't seem to finish it up and make it look good, date it, put it away, put it in a box, because that's a stepping stone where you can look back and see how far you've come. Now, I did go pull out a bright fuchsia pinkish color on the Sharpies here, and I'm adding some details with that also. I have more control over the Sharpies and where that goes than I do over the paint. I always think this is Whimsy, and I always think of little spirals in Whimsy for some reason. So I'm adding that to her dress. Still not too happy with the way it looks though, so I'm going to have to do something else to it. This is my Martha Stewart opaque marker icing white. It's a pigment ink, and it's not as opaque as I like. If I could have found it, I would have used my Sharpie paint pen that gives a lot more opaque look to it. But right now at my house we have new kitten syndrome, which means the two new Manx cats that I have are playing havoc with all my art supplies. No matter where I work, they seem to dump things over and pick their favorites and knock it up under the furniture. So I'm making this work, and I see that it doesn't work very well on the outside of the hair. So I'm going to go back to my black, and I had done a little line work up in the hair that I don't like. This hair is almost dry, but I'll move down here to the face area and let that dry just a little bit more. I had originally thought that I was going to use white on this again, but as I worked with the black and made it work, I really liked it. I really liked the way it was beginning to turn out. See there? You don't stop. When you hate it, you just keep working and making it work. Force it to do what you want it to do. Or relax in it. Sometimes just relax in the process is the best way instead of trying to force something. The only thing I'm really trying to do here is to make sure that the lines aren't equally apart, equal distances apart. Now I'm going to go down here and outline this white that didn't show up very well and make it look like a little eyelet lace on the edges. It seems to show up better when I outline it with the black. And I kind of like this now. Another little line in the hair to break it up the shapes. And here she is, my first Whimsy face using Twinkling H2O's Luminous Faces. So I'm off to make my color chart before I begin my next one. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my Linda Ann Smith channel, my personal channel, and ColourArte's channel. I'll add both of those channel links in the description box below. It's always appreciated when you comment, like, and share. Thank you so much for watching.